Hi everyone, I'm Scott.
And I'm Julie.
And this week we're talking to you about a guy named Jesus. You might have heard of him before. He had just come from the eastern side to the western side of the Sea of Galilee, and he's in a street very unlike the one we're in now, where we are quite alone. But Jesus was not alone in the street that he was walking in. In fact, as he was walking in the street, crowds were surrounding him. And then a religious leader came up to him very unsettled in what I would imagine to be fairly aggressive fashion. It's like, Jesus, I need you to come touch my daughter. I need you to heal her. And Jesus, in very Jesus-like fashion, agrees and says, all right, let's go, let's heal your daughter. And how often do interruptions happen to our schedules? And so Jesus accepts this interruption to his schedule, follows Jairus, and it is in that moment that something totally unexpected happens.
Yeah, so this woman we hear about who has been bleeding for 12 years, she would have been considered unclean and untouchable. I can't imagine what it would be like to go 12 years without touch and feeling shunned and feeling shamed. She probably did every possible thing to find healing and couldn't find it. And then she hears the name of Jesus and she knows he's coming, and she's thinking, maybe, just maybe, if I can make my way through that crowd without them stopping me, maybe I have a chance to be healed. And so the story goes on to say that she does indeed leave her tent or wherever she was, makes her way through the crowds, and she reaches out and she touches the cloak of Jesus. And it says she was immediately healed. Well, at this time, Jesus looks down and says, "Who touched me?" Everything stops. There's people everywhere. They're surrounding Jesus. They're in a huge crowd. It says he was actually like all crunched together. Yeah. And of course, someone touched him, but he knew that power left him. And so he stopped and said, "Who touched me?" And he looked down at her. And this is what I think is so profound, is that the word of this week is notice. And when I read this passage, it said, then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace."
Here you have a religious leader in Jesus. For her to work her way through the crowd, she was unclean. She was not allowed to be touched. And so she was doing that. And then for her to touch Jesus, this massive cultural faux pas. And so I can only imagine the pain and embarrassment she was going through, but yet the desperation to just get into Jesus's presence in his reality. And in the comments of the disciples of who touched me and whatnot. And for Jesus to not just embrace the interruption, but to fully, the details and ramifications that he would now be ceremonially unclean. He could not perform his duties as a religious leader. And yet this doesn't even faze Jesus' attention, and he embraces that. And so we have Jairus' interruption, which stalls out his day. And then we have this woman's interruption, which completely derails the next several weeks. And yet that's not the attention of the story. The attention of the story rests in this woman who desperately needed a touch. And then in the noticing of that. And what happens when we notice those in need.
So as we journey towards Easter and we think about this Jesus who is interruptible, who stops for the one, who sees, I think there's two invitations for us. And one of them is, what are the places in your own heart, in your own life, that you would say are the shameful places, the hidden places, the things you don't want anyone to know, the places where you've given up hope, you've tried everything possible that you can, and you just need hope? What are those places in your life? Because that's the Jesus that I'm enamored by. That there's this Jesus that my junk, my stuff, my shame, my sickness, all of that is not too much for him, and I can bring it to him, and that he will notice me. The second thing that I think is important for us to remember is that, yes, we can bring our stuff to Jesus and allow him to notice us and allow him to be our healer and our redeemer and all the things of who Jesus is, allowing him to be the Lord over our lives. But secondly, we also are invited to be like Jesus. That in order to be like Jesus, it means that even if we are on a task to save someone's life, again, something I can't imagine stopping in the middle of to pay attention to a touch, but Jesus stops for the one. And so I'm invited personally to think through, what does it look like to stop for the one? Who am I willing to see? Who am I willing to stop for? Who am I willing to interact with? We've got a synagogue leader, we've got a 12-year-old dying girl, and we have a woman who is lower class, shunned, unclean, for 12 years suffering, and Jesus interacts with every one of them in this story. And so to be like Jesus, we can bring our stuff to him in exchange for his healing and his notice. And then we also in turn get to live like Jesus, who came not to be served, but to serve. So this week, as you continue your journey in the Lenten devotional, I hope that you also are just enamored by this Jesus who makes himself so available to you, who sees you, who knows your every need, whether you are still hiding in the tent, feeling ashamed, he still sees you, or whether you come out and have, in faith, sit before him and wait for his healing. And secondly, to serve, to be available, to look at the world around you, whether that's your neighbors, your family, your coworkers, whether that's serving the homeless, whether that's jumping into all of the people who are going to be affected by the coronavirus, and so many different things. There are opportunities for us to be like Jesus, to live like Jesus, and to serve like Jesus.
Amen.
Amen.
Have a great time.